Good morning, Christ City Church. My name is Matthew. I serve as one of the pastors here. If I haven't had a chance to meet you, I would love to meet you at the end of it. And also, I know some folks that it's their first time here, and just want to acknowledge and welcome you and just say how courageous that you are. And thank you for joining us in this moment this morning. I'm going to share some things with you. Some of you know this. For others of you, I'm about to blow your mind. You ready? Strap in. I used to be a professional dancer. Be amazed. That's right. It's true. I learned to dance a pretty niche dance called baile folclórico. It's a style of dance. It's anybody else? Anybody? Any baile folclórico? Yeah, perfect. I see that head nod. Surprisingly, perfect. Pretty common form of dance throughout much of Latin America. I learned the form that's traditional to Mexico. I danced in high school. I won competitions. I danced in parades, got a scholarship to dance, and I danced professionally for a group for a brief time. Right? Fortunately, for so many of you, it's pre-YouTube. Only still photos. Show you later when you're over at the house. Still have my boots. It's a pretty good dancer. How I got into dancing, though, that's a very different story. When I was 12 years old, I went to my cousin's wedding. She lived in Atlanta. I was in Dallas at the time, so we drove over to Atlanta. While I was at the wedding, sort of the few days kind of leading up to it, I met a young lady. It was I don't know, some distant cousin. I don't know. It was the other side of the family. I didn't know who she was. Developed a little crush on her. Her name was Tatiana. That's right, 12-year-old me. She was a number of years older than me. I think she was like 16, I was 12, but, man, if confidence was in nickels, I'd be a millionaire back then, it didn't matter. I had loads of fragile courage, and so in the days kind of leading up to the wedding, I was building up my courage to approach her. And the night of the wedding, during the reception, the cousin, she had, they had like a wedding band up there. They had a little parquet dance floor in the backyard. And a 12-year-old me, man, I downed a glass of like Martinelli's. And I'm like, all right, here I go, shooting my shot. And I walked up to her and I asked her for a dance. She said yes, of course. I mean, who wouldn't say yes? And, man, I was giving it my best show, man. And I'm dancing, I'm moving, I'm trying to figure it out as a 12-year-old. Wasn't quite, the dancing star that you see in front of you. And at some point during the dance, she steps back from dancing and she looks at me and she goes, "You're not moving your feet enough." And I was like, "What?" She said I wasn't dancing very well. She wasn't harsh about it, but I was devastated. What? I came out of that moment and I swore, from that point forward, I would never let the dance floor down or anybody else I was dancing with. And I went home and I practiced. And I practiced all the dances. I remember sneaking cardboard because my dad, he would always throw stuff away, just random stuff kind of laying around. Like he would just throw it away if it wasn't nailed down. And I remember sneaking cardboard into the window of my apartment complex into my bedroom so that I could practice breakdancing with my buddies kind of in privacy before I just did it out on the streets, because that could have really crushed me, somebody seeing that business. And so I would go to, I was just sharing this with one of my sons. I would sneak into, I don't know if I should share this. I would sneak into honky tonks. I would do break dance, honky tonks, R&B. It didn't matter to me. I wanted to learn all of it, all just so that I could become the best dancer that I could ever be. I never took classes because we just didn't have money for that kind of thing when I was growing up. But I always found folks that would teach me. Now, a couple of years later, after the wedding dance debacle, I'm at a school dance, Gaston Middle School, and I'm dancing with Beverly Shin. I grew up with Beverly. I knew her. She knew me. We moved in kind of different circles, but we knew each other. And at some point, I'm dancing with Beverly, and she steps back just like Tatiana, and I'm like, "Oh, God, dog, what's about to happen here?" And she says, "Matthew, you are a really good dancer." That's right. Yes, I would go on to secure other awards, and I'm not going to dance for you in this moment, so.
Why not? Give the people what
Trying to focus on Christ in this moment, not me. But there, when Beverly Shin said that to me, that's when I knew that work had paid off. I was the same kid, but I'd also changed. A change had happened. I'd had an experience somewhere on a dance floor in Atlanta and then in a cafeteria in Dallas. There was a relationship. There was a person, or Tatiana or Beverly or someone in my life that had sort of fostered some measure of change. There was an obstacle or a challenge for me to overcome. I wanted to become a better dancer. Babette Buster is a screenwriter and story consultant for Pixar Pictures. And in her book entitled Do Stories, she writes, stories are always about transformation. Fundamentally, we're being called to change, to discover the courage to become our best selves. This week, as we continue in the Learning to Live series, we will explore our stories, the stories of our lives. And our aim in this work is to recognize that in our stories, in our lives, that God has been with us throughout all of our lives. Next week, we're going to give consideration to God's story and how our story and God's story both intersects and is intertwined. But first, let's start where we are. If you're just joining us or you've missed us for a few weeks, we're at the front end of a new sermon series and a discipleship emphasis that we're going through as a church. As Pastor Justin shared in the opening sermon in this series, for the next 3 months leading up to Easter Sunday, we will be walking through a discipleship journey called Learning to Live. We're following a curriculum that Pastor Justin wrote a number of years ago specifically for our church, with the simple hope that we as individuals and that we as a congregation and as a community might better learn how to live as Jesus lived, and that we might better learn how to live as Jesus would if he were in our place. Now, until Easter, Learning to Live is going to be the focus of our sermons. It's going to be the focus of our small group meetings and our Kid City, where many of our leaders are writing a Kid City curriculum that matches Learning to Live. We're going to explore topics that will help us know that we believe are essential to the Christian life. Topics like prayer and service and testimony. And as I mentioned today, we're going to explore our own stories. Because our stories and our lives are the very places and spaces where God is working. Right now and throughout our lives. We don't just encounter God at some point in the future, but rather, as our scripture in Psalm 139 highlighted, there's no place where God hasn't been with us. In the joys and the sorrows and the traumas and in the healing, if we would but see him there. This morning, I've invited a special friend of mine, a special friend of Christ City, to help me with the sermon today, Dr. Daniel Harris. Is an author, an artist, an actor, a theologian. He spent 2 decades ministering and living in downtown Memphis as a community chaplain and public theologian. He's recently finished his dissertation exploring the topic of theology of disability. And some of you might remember Daniel from our disability theology webinar that we hosted last year. So I just invite you to welcome Daniel Harris.
Hey guys.
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, right. I am so thankful to be here. But, I met it event. It's been about 5 years. And, yeah. So, but I'm just thankful to the whole staff and all of that. So, for those of you who did not know me, I'll share a little bit about who I am and what I'm about. My name is Daniel, and yeah, I do all of the things that you just said. And a little more, but I'm really bad in it, we'll talk about it in a minute, but I'm trying to know more about who I am over the last years. That I am a man I am a disabled man, and that that means something that and that is a part of my story. I can't get away from it, nor that I want to ever get away from it. And so I go through my story to remember like where I was in when I came here like a year ago. Like more has happened since then, where I'm more secure in who I am and the way God made me. And so so we're talking about a bit so growing up in the 80s, with parents, my parents, like to give you a little background. In 1978, is when they passed the law to have people with disability were able to go to school and be able to get an education. And so, and then in 1990, is when the ADA passed. So we're talking about still in the 80s, no one knew a lot about disability. Nobody knew why or what for. And eventually growing up in a Christian household, the idea was that what God is going to heal you. Like that is like God is going to make you whole. And one day you're going to be like everybody else because that is the will of God. And you know, going through all of this about finding out who I am and how God did make me like we just read. He formed me in my mother's womb. He knew my brain, all of that. The more and more I realized that, the harder and harder it was for my parents and the people around me to get on board with that. Because that would mean a lot deeper story. That would mean a whole lot more messy story. Because it really is when we look at a story and go, you know, God, you're broken and God needs to heal that. But it's like God created me just the way I am. That gives you a lot more questions about who God is, about how He operates, all of those things. And so what do we do with that those broken stories? Well, we have to go back and look at the story that God is really telling about our life. Like, like, the, like I don't even think it is a new story. It is a old story. The story before it got told by other humans. The story that God loves you or love someone with a disability so much that he actually looked at and go, I want to create gentle a cerebral party man. That would be the way. That would give me delight. And so we look at the proof within a story that God is telling, not what a document is telling us or what man is telling us, but what is the story that God is telling us. And those abilities, they become brand new. We don't want the story is there. If you look at the abilities, but you know, I was just thinking about now how, you know, before I get my you and came up and got my chair set away at one point you can look at a story like that and go, man, they think that I help with. I can't do that myself. But then you look deeper and you look at what God is doing and you look at how. No, it is the whole community working together. That is the real event. So it's not if you look at it, the event. But like I said before, like when we dig deeper, when we really look at the real event and the pain and the well, there's a lot of mess there. There's a lot of we have to in order to live out the story and move on from the point. We have to be real about what we're going through. Yeah, I am disabled. It's hard. Well, there's been times that I want to run away from it. There's been times that I yell at God and be mad at God saying, okay, now Now, I know that God created me like this. Now what? Like, what would you do? Like, you know how the world is. Like, what would you do? And so my whole life has been the thing of giving, really becoming more intimate with God and who He is, and talking to Him like a real person. I believe that make our relationship better. So I got you and let's think about how I got my to grow you and how my God be healing you now but pain. And I wish just because healing that word is, but what it got is renewing us. We will both be, or who we really are. You come into your yourself. You are getting to know your lover more and more every day behind all of the events. Not just the good one, not just the bad one, but the ugly one, and the good one, and the bloody one. Like all of that help us know God more.
There's so much that we can say about the ways in which our experiences and our stories begin to become enmeshed and intertwined with what God is doing in our lives. Daniel has shared a little bit about his own experience. There's other ways that our relationships can shape us. There's ways that our blessings can shape us. Ways that our trials can shape us. When I think about relationships, one of the things that, as Daniel and I were praying through and talking through and preparing for, and reflecting on the passage, one of the things that Daniel pointed out was that in order for us to know who God is, I have to know your story as well. I don't have the lone singular view of God. I need to hear God's words through the words of others. I need to see God's work in the lives of others. I need to experience God's work of salvation through the salvation of others. Part of the Christian Reformed Catechism that's often paraphrased in those denominations is regarding humanity's vocation is to know God and make Him known. However, in order to do this, I need the stories of others so that I might see and to know God. Our faith is always shaped in relationships. It's a relationship that Jesus invites us into. It's a relationship with Christ that provides the entrance into God's kingdom. It is relationships with God and others that sustains us in our work in God's just kingdom. A few years ago, Daniel and I, goodness gracious, I was living in D.C. at the time, and it's a music festival in downtown Memphis every year. One year, Daniel goes down there, and then afterwards, I was visiting in town, and I saw him, and he was scraped up. He knows I was going to tell his story. He was scraped. I said, "Man, what happened to you?" Sometimes Daniel falls, and he said, "Well, I ran into some guys at the music festival. They saw me in the ways that I walked. They thought I was drunk. They picked on me, and they beat me up." I was heated. I was like, "Man, let's call down thunder. Let's call down fire. Let's figure out what we're going to do. Scorched earth." And Daniel reminded me in that moment, he said, "Matthew, these are the very ones that God sent me to minister to." They don't understand care and compassion and justice. I think about that every time. As we went through our peacemaking series, I thought about Daniel and the ways that he reminded me of God's just and peaceable kingdom. Thought about that when my son was attacked on the bus. I thought about that when neighbors have been victims of violence. I thought about that when folks left our small group and then on H Street and were harassed. And I remember Daniel's voice to me to say, these are the very ones that God calls us to be salt and light to, because we're shaped even in relationships. We're also shaped by trials. Daniel, I'm going to put this section of your talk in front of you, and I'm looking at the clock, bro, and I see them people, they standing up on us, so we might need to move through this. Otherwise, we're going to be shaped in an empty room here in a minute.
Yeah, so when we look at about the main point that I want to bring out when God is in the midst of about the thing and there about that a real but that a really hard and really emotional and like I just tell you about my heart being a disabled man. But the thing is what about her? That's the thing I want. And when we are talking about joy, we can remember back when I said about my church, how they be healing and all of that. Now, what was my real battle? Like when I look at my body, it is hard. Is that the battle, or is the battle the church and the system is broken to make you believe that you are what you're not? And but my hand, my right hand, people ask me that like, oh Daniel, I'm sorry about your hand. Like I wish that one day, someday, your hand would be breaking out. And it really makes me mad. Because my hand is created just like it's supposed to be. And I thought about my friend Lisa, and I would not want Lisa to be anybody else, but I would never want her to be that Lisa. I'm sorry that you are a woman. Like I pray for you a day to change. But one day when we go to heaven, you won't be a woman no more. and like everything will be different. No. That's who God created her to be. And like, I am not a man with cerebral palsy. I am a cerebral palsy man. And when you look at that, it, like I said before, it changes the whole story. I did my dissertation on disability, but I also did it on the blues. Because me is all about the blues. And the thing about the blues is the blues was a act, the way to tell a story like it is. No, making it look good, no, but it was a way of telling the African American feeling like it is. It was when a time of lament, like attention. But then you had the bill of rules, which were on the opposite of that. So I know how it is. I know where I am. But tomorrow is a new day. And God is going to change me. But not one thing, but that we're looking for one day when I get a child and we're going to sail a party angels. And it's not the outward change, it will be the environment, the people, that is the hope.
That's good.
And that when we're looking out of a building, yeah, we won't always be happy, but we'll have joy in the that is the future, that is the reason why we do what we do.
Experiences, relationships, trials is just a few of the ingredients that go into the story that make up us. As we finish up, I want to invite the band to come on up. So some of the things that the Lord uses and wants to shape in us. Psalm 139 asks, where can I go from God's presence? And then names a few of the different experiences, different trials, situations. If I'm in the shadows, God is there. If I'm in the depths, God's there. Sailing on the seas, God's there too. Knowing me, loving me, healing me, rescuing, watching out and watching over me, reminding me that with the Lord all things are possible. So maybe as we kind of steer towards communion, towards a moment where we remember the promises of God, let me just end maybe with this story. This classic C.S. Lewis tale, A Horse and His Boy. It's the story of a young boy, Shasta. Shasta was orphaned at sea. When his parents die in a boat carrying them all, he watches ashore. Is taken by a tyrant fisherman, treats Shasta as a slave. Through the story, Shasta just encounters one tragedy after another, and at a particularly low point towards the end of the tale, Shasta has again been left, been abandoned. He's riding alone in the dark, and great tears fill his eyes. He realizes how tragic his journey is, how tragic his story has been. The story picks up, and being very tired and having nothing inside him, Shasta felt so sorry for himself that big tears rolled down his cheeks. What put a stop to all of this was a sudden fright. Shasta discovered that somebody or someone was walking beside him. "Who are you?" Shasta said in barely a whisper. "One who has waited long for you to speak," the thing said. The voice was not loud, but it was very large and very deep. "Tell me your sorrows," said the voice. So Shasta told how he had never known his real father or mother, had been brought up sternly by a fisherman. And he told the story of his escape and how they were chased by lions and forced to swim for their lives and all of their dangers in Tashbaan. He told about his time in the tombs where beasts howled at him out in the desert. Told of the heat and how he was thirsty in the journey in the desert, and how they were almost at their goal when another lion chased them and wounded them, and also how very long it had been since he had eaten anything. I did not call you unfortunate, said the voice. Don't you think it was bad luck to see so many lions? Said Shasta. There's only one lion, said the voice. How do you know? Because I was the lion. As Shasta gaped with an open mouth and said nothing, the voice continued, I was the lion who forced you to join with the others. I was the cat who comforted you in the tombs. I was the lion who drove the jackals from you while you slept. I was the lion who gave the horse new strength for fear for that last mile, so that you would reach the king in time. And I was the lion that you do not remember, who pushed the boat in which you lay, a child near death, so that it came to shore where a man sat wakeful at midnight to receive you. Aslan had been with Shasta the entire time, caring for him, watching over him, even in the midst of the sorrowful nights, caring for him. Aslan, like Christ, is with all of us in all of our stories and every part of our stories, even when we see him not. This week, as you live into the story that is ahead, I want you to know that God is there for you and for those around you. Let me pray for us.